Hello, welcome to our latest Full Steam Ahead webcast. I'm Brian Schmidt, librarian and industry analyst here at Geothermal Rising, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. Before I introduce our speaker, I do have a few announcements to make. I want to let you all know that we're recording this event and it will be available on our YouTube channel next week. We want to thank our members for their continued support. Your membership helps us continue our mission to build and strengthen the geothermal industry, and we appreciate it. We want to thank our Earth Energy visionaries, Turboden, SLB, Quays, Exceed, Ever, Kenai, the Geysers Calpine, Baker Hughes, and Egg Geo. As well as our geothermal champions, Burns McDonnell, COSO Operating Company, BHE Renewables, Chevron, Expro, Fervo, Halliburton, Ormat, Carbo, NOV, Oxy, Sinclair, and Southern Company. And we want to also thank our clean energy sustainers, Zanskar, XGS, Steamflow, Valoric, National Lab of the Rockies, Geologica, Imperial County, DTEC, Distributed Energy Group, Bantam, Central Washington University, Baseload Capital, and Ameresco. We have a couple of upcoming events I'd like to make you all aware of. We have our Thermal Energy Network Symposium, March 2nd and 3rd in Baltimore, Maryland. The 2026 Geothermal Investment Forum and the 2026 Technical Symposium on Mutual Challenges, both taking place in Houston, April 7th and 8th. Capitol Hill Day is going to be in Washington on April 28th through 30th. We have the Indigenous Geothermal Symposium that's going to be in Calgary this year, June 6th and 7th. And of course, our annual Geothermal Rising Conference, which is going to be in Houston, Texas, September 20th through 23rd. And with that, now let me introduce you to our speaker today. Carlos Gorraez Meraz is currently completing a master's in environment management at Royal Roads University with a thesis on social acceptance of geothermal systems in Western Canada. He is now starting a Doctor of Business Administration at the same university, broadening his research to include market acceptance, concentrating on the factors influencing firms and investors' choices to adopt geothermal energy within the energy transition. The study Carlos will present today was conducted through his work with Geothermal Rising. It examines public perceptions and key drivers of acceptance for different geothermal systems across the United States. His research draws on large-scale data collection and uses methods such as cross-sectional surveys and factorial survey experiments to generate insights that can inform policy and industry decision-making. We're excited to have him share these findings with the Geothermal Rising community today. I also want to mention quickly that there will be a brief Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please feel free to enter your questions at any time using the Q&A function on the Zoom UI. And with that, I'll hand it off to Carlos.
Thank you very much, Brian. Let me then share my screen here. Just let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Carlos Gorraez, and I'm happy to share insights from a research I conducted as a Geothermal Rising Earth Energy Fellow the past year. It was a great experience. I learned a lot, and I worked with an amazing and inspiring team with Brian, with Meraz, and of course with Anina. I enjoy this work, and I enjoy contributing to the geothermal outreach and research. So I want to start asking you to imagine this, right? A clean energy source that runs day and night, that provides heats and electricity to homes and industries, that delivers reliable baseload power, and by mid-century could supply around 12% of US electricity and provide heating to almost a quarter of American households. But yet, when you mention it, the room goes silent, right? This is what happened with geothermal energy. So a technology with enormous potential that had been used for over a century, but is still almost invisible in public conversations. So my own journey into this topic started as having in mind that in energy transition is also social transition. And when I look at the geothermal systems, one thing became clear. the technology can check many boxes that we want from clean energy sources. As I said, it can deliver reliable power. It could be independent from climate and weather. It can become even more competitive, and it could be also transformative. But I also learned something that applies to every major energy transition, and that is that energy transition do not happen just because the technology works. So for, in this case, geothermal to move into thrive from a niche innovation to a mainstream solution, four things must align, which is smart engineering, supportive policies, adequate finance, and most importantly, in this case, is social acceptance. So, and there is certainly work being done in all these sites, but in my perspective, social acceptance received the less attention, even though it can determine whether a project advances smoothly or face delays or disagreements or resistance or even opposition. So this work focuses on how people perceive geothermal system and what will take to build approval needed for wider adoptions. Then, despite this strong potential, geothermal remains far less visible as, for example, solar or wind, right? So, and that matters. Even the U.S. Department of Energy has explicitly identified that public unfamiliarity and weak social acceptance are key barriers to scaling geothermal deployments. But when we look at the academic evidence, even though it is acknowledged, I found a clear gap. So there is limited research on geothermal acceptance in the US, actually in the world. And as far as I check, none of that compares multiple geothermal technologies side by side. So uh, that was precisely the kind of questions that Geothermal Rising wanted to explore, and I wanted to explore. So this study was designed to fill that gap by measuring not only how much acceptance exists, but why and what people believe, what are the concerns, and what are the drivers to that acceptance across the three geothermal systems. So across GeoExchange, hydrothermal, and next generation geothermal systems, which includes enhanced geothermal system and advanced geothermal systems. So uh, uh, in that leads to this question here. So how is the social acceptance of geothermal systems characterized in the United States? Uh, but before I want to clarify, of course, what do I mean by social acceptance? And in this context, in the context of energy transition, when we talk about social acceptance, we are referring of how far people or communities endorse, adopt, tolerate, and ultimately support the energy technologies. So, and this is a key point because social acceptance is not a fixed judgment. It evolves depending on what people know. So this is this cognition element, how the people feel. This is an emotional element, and how the people are intent to do. So this is the actual intention. So acceptance is not simply say I am pro or against or merely support or opposition. It's a social process and it's not black and white sometimes. So, and we have seen this in across the energy transition when clean energy with clean energy, people often take social acceptance for granted. So projects can slow down or fail when social acceptance breaks down. So let me just show you three quick examples among many others that are outside. So the first one is this one. It's an example from Basel, Switzerland. And is often cited as an enhanced geothermal system project in 2006 that triggered, uh, you know, a negative social response because of seismicity in the area. So the key lessons here is that the challenge was not only a technical risk, but it was uncertainty and trust. So when people feel impacts and do not feel informed and protected, negative perception can grow faster than facts. So the risk management was there, but maybe the speed and the trust was not the optimal. So basically, it's not. This case was not saying that geothermal is equal to earthquake. So it's just a reminder that risk communication, transparency, and trust are essential in the proper time too. So another example of this is in Germany, in Landau. So deep geothermal project that became controversial after failed seismic events, and that also triggers public concern and a strong local scrutiny. So what stands out is that the debate quickly moved beyond the technical side. So it was more about now accountability, about communication, about trust. It was uh, really important to clarify those not technical conditions. So importantly, Landau wasn't a case where benefits were missing. For example, the project promised local renewable power and economic value in the community. But once the seismicity was felt, risk perception and trust dominate the discussion. So the project was not canceled, but it faced disruption and operational challenge. So the lesson here was that even when benefits exist, the need of transparent engagement and trust building were essential to maintain this social acceptance. And then one last example of many is the case in Chile, in Araucanía. This is a place with high geothermal potential, but almost no development. So a study done by Vargas Pallera found out that low familiarity creates uncertainty, and uncertainty increases perceived risks. But the deeper the issue is that the deeper issue here was that the communities described that the top-down communication was not was break in some part, and then there is a lots of mistrust and the feeling of the benefit and the fairness was not there. So there were questions like, what do we gain from this, and what does my community gain from this? So, and another layer of complexity in this case too was that the communities, the Mapuche communities, have a spiritual meaning with the volcanoes. So the place was also a cultural, place, and that has a value for the community. So the takeaway here was that geothermal acceptance is not only about this technical performance, but it's also again about how you build the trust there, how fair the community feel they are treated, and what is the local relevance. So those are three cases that shows how important is the social acceptance for a project to move smooth or maybe face resistance and consequences. Uh, Now, then, before look at the rest of the study and the results, I wanted to quick note how the study here was designed with the question in mind. So this was a national survey that collect over of 6,000 um, uh, items or questions from the adults across the United States. So we were collected with a data collection company, Leger, and we use a two-branch of sampling approach. One branch was oversampling 14 geothermal, states that are considered as with a big geothermal potential. Uh, because of the conditions or because of the policies or because of the perspective the nation have with these states. And then the rest of the country, we, let's say, group it in five regions. So these regions were um, built based on the similarities and geothermal conditions of the states in those regions. So this way we cover the whole United States, and the sample was had quotas by age and gender, and this aligns with the census benchmarks. And the advantage here was that the report result in a really national and with meaningful geographic differences, and we could compare some key states and some key regions too. But here I'm gonna just show you the general, the national results here, the national insights. And then we did it through what did we did with this data? We did a analytical, layers of or stages. The first layer of analysis sets the context. So before introducing geothermal, we ask what people value the most from an energy source. So this was a select and ranking uh, question, and we choose 8 attributes. That was affordability, reliability, low climate impact, accessibility, safety for humans, safety for ecosystems, jobs, and minimal disruptions to the landscape. So this was before geothermal is introduced. We also measure the baseline familiarity, which is that we ask how familiar is the respondents with the different type of clean energy sources, including geothermal. This way we have a baseline familiarity that we can compare among technologies. The second layer of analysis was to measure the core outcome, which was social acceptance. And we did this for the three type of geothermal system, for geo-exchange, for hydrothermal, and for next generation geothermal systems. And then the next layer of analysis, we did the analysis to predict what are the drivers of these acceptance levels. So we used a model with 8 factors to see what was the most, which of these factors most strongly predicts, in this case, social acceptance. And the last layer of analysis was taken into this real world. So we use a factorial survey experiment where people evaluate some characteristics of realistic scenarios that were put in place. And we did this factorial experiment where we switched the variables in those scenarios to see how the people evaluate each scenario. I will explain that in later in this presentation. So the takeaway here was that the study was in this logic. First, set the context for acceptance before even entering to geothermal systems, then measure the acceptance of the geothermal systems, then explain this acceptance, what are the predictors for this, and then at the end, just test the acceptance under realistic project conditions. So then, yeah. Now, I would like to show you the conceptual model that guide this study. So we define social acceptance using three, let's say, items. We ask the people how in favor they are for the specific technology, how comfort they feel. So this is a cognitive question. This is an emotional question, and the overall support is with the intention way. So we combine these three outcomes to produce, let's say, a composite indicator of social acceptance. And then we have this key predictor here that according to with the literature about the geothermal, about the renewable technologies and everything, it's are the key factors that um, influence to social acceptance. So we choose familiarity as the basic knowledge of geothermal. Doesn't the people doesn't have to be an expert, just have the basic knowledge and how it works. The perceived costs. So yeah, this is more about the financial impacts, including energy prices or public subsidies. So the perceived benefits, so this is expected positive outcomes like lower bills that have reliable, energy in them homes, and the energy security too. Perceived risk was concerns like issues about environment, cost overruns, and a little bit about like what could impact the landscape that where they are right there. We didn't specifically ask for seismicity because hydrothermal and geoexchange do not have those problems, but we did ask for an overall risk perception. So then we use the subjective norms whether people that are important to you, how do they support or think about geothermal systems? And then the social responsibility is whether the you feels good doing or supporting this type of energy. So this is more like the perception of doing the right thing, right? And we also include some contextual factors, which was demographics, the trust, and some beliefs. Okay, now moving right now into the straight to the results as we start with the first layer of analysis. Um, and this is the big context. So this is what Americans value in energy systems. So this is independence of the type of clean energy technology. This is, what do you value the more? This is what is more important for you from an energy source. And the respondents was asked first to select among those 8 attributes. They were asked to select the 4 that were more important to them. And then the second question was that from those 4 that you select, please rank them. So the graphic here is showing not only the frequency of the selection, but also the ranking of that selection. So, and the message here is really clear. So affordability, right? Safety for humans and reliability are the most dominant attributes from American people. So expectations remain really pragmatic. The energy must be cost effective, must be reliable, and must be safe. That doesn't mean that the rest of the attributes, for example, jobs or minimal disruption to the landscape does not matter. So this means that if there is a trade-off, people will choose first affordability, safety for humans, and reliability. And after that, they will choose some other one, right? Uh, this is really important to know because that sets the stage for understand the later results too. So people know what they want, right? But do they know that geothermal can provide that? And the question maybe lies here, no? This is the results for the familiarity of the different clean energy sources, including geothermal. So there is a very clear pattern, right? Solar and wind dominates the public awareness. You can see here about 44% of the people um, find solar really familiar or extremely familiar, and 36% of the people, around 36%, find wind very familiar or extremely familiar. So and this is kind of, logic because when you talk with people about renewable energy or clean energy sources, I think that they picture, a windmill or a solar panel in a roof of a house. So in contrast, you can see geothermal here that is do not have that, just 18% of the people are really extremely familiar or very familiar, but almost more than half of the people are not familiar at all or slightly familiar. The only system that is less familiar is bioenergy. So, and this is, some of the issues that geothermal energy has. This is low visibility, and low visibility can lead to uncertainty and can lead to misunderstanding about the technology and perceive risk differently than with other energies. Now, so what we see here is the next level of the analysis is the measuring the acceptance. So we measure the acceptance, as I mentioned, with the combination of favorability, the feeling, the comfort feeling, and the overall support from a Likert scale from 1 to 5. So this table shows that the acceptance in the United States, have a moderate, indication. That is acceptance is moderate to positive, and you can see that hydrothermal is a little bit higher than geo-exchange, but next generation geothermal system is a bit lower. This is actually encouraging results because what this means is respondents showed a baseline acceptance, a mean acceptance, let's say, across all geothermal types. And this is despite the fact that the technology is not well known. So, despite the low familiarity, the acceptance is, let's say, moderate. And that is kind of encouraging um, insight to think about that because it is the time to place geothermal and geothermal energy, geothermal systems in the correct position of the public opinion. So, and now let's see what drives these results, this level of acceptance. Um, Moving into the results, I just want to, clarify a little bit, the conceptual model again. Just remind you, social acceptance was the combination of these three factors, and we have a composite measure of social acceptance here, and we have these 8 key predictors here, right? This is plus contextual factors and demographics and stuff. So we run some regression analysis for that, and these were the results. So the figures summarize these results and estimates. They were estimates for each geothermal technology. So we run the model 3 times, each for one geothermal technology. So each dot shows the estimate effect of one predictor on social acceptance while controlling all other predictors. And this, in other words, so this is telling us how much acceptance change, right? If the predictors increase 1 point in this 1 to 5 Likert scale uh, 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 question. So, for example, if perceived benefits increase 1 point, social acceptance, depending of the technology, but will increase between 0.204 and 0.2065. And this is the same with all other predictors. Then the pattern here is very clear across the technology is that the perceived benefits are the stronger driver of acceptance. So then, when we see consistent positive effects, uh, this is the stronger benefit, the stronger driver. But we can see also other consistent and positive effects in fairness, subjective norms, social responsibility, and familiarity. And the main barrier is obviously the costs. And surprisingly here, risk and hedonic, which is aesthetic evaluations, do not play really a significant role, or it was not significant or really weak. And also about the trust and the context, they do have mixed and modest effects too. So just to summarize this is that the drivers for these levels of social acceptance is the perceived benefits, the subjective norms, so what other people think about the people that I care think about geothermal, also familiarity, the social responsibility, the feeling of doing the right thing, and perceived fairness. So are the drivers, and the main barrier is obviously the perceived cost. So when they see that these projects could be overrun or the taxpayers will pay a lot for that, and stuff like that. So this was the one part. Then let's move to the last layer of analysis, and this is the factorial survey experiment. So in this next part, I will explain this. This is show a little bit more realistic scenarios or realistic, characteristics of a project. And these let us, test actually, that is why it's an experiment, test the support under certain conditions. And this is something that you cannot obtain with a normal survey or a direct question. So, and this is more focusing on a specific project that the people will feel, and then they need to do some trade-offs there. So, what do I mean with this? Uh, I will brief explain how was designed, the factorial survey experiment was designed. So these tables shows 5 dimensions here, and these dimensions were taken from the model too. I didn't use the whole 8 dimensions because it was too long and it's too complex, but I used the 5 main dimensions here. And each dimension have 3 levels of analysis. So the first level here, they will show always the most, let's say, positive outcomes of this dimension. So for example, if you go to benefit, let's say the project will cut bills probably 25%. Then the third level of this dimension will show the less positive outcome. So instead of 25, they will show 5% or more negative things in case of the risk. So here in risk there is no problems or uh, risk problem or budget overruns. But in level 3, there is a noticeable chance of earthquake or contamination and high risk of cost overrun. So what do I mean with this? We combine all these scenarios, like let's say this. Um, we create a vignette or scenario using the levels and dimensions here. As you can see here, the technology, then the first level, which is the first variable, and then we use the second, dimension with the third level and so on. So what it is that this we do several combinations of this, and we deploy these several combinations with among the people. So what we obtain here is that the evaluation of if each combination of these scenarios, and then we ask the people to rate the scenario from 1 to 10. So actually this scenario here is an example, and it was one of the highest rated. The average for this scenario was around 7.1, 7.5 or something. So this is the result. Once that we deploy, it was, each scenario was answered around 137 times. And as I said, we evaluate, these combinations. And what we have done here is like multi-level regression models and analysis, and then we obtain these results here. This is showing us is that from a scenario that have, in this case, for example, some level of analysis to another level of analysis, how does the acceptance or the support in this case change? And the results are very clear. Reducing risk is the strongest and most consistent driver of support across geothermal types. And this doesn't mean that geothermal is unsafe, of course, but this maybe means that credible risk management needs to put in place. So increasing benefits show also such as lower bills or better reliability also rise support, and the social endorsement, especially from local and environmental groups, also increase support. So on the other hand, moving from a large subsidy to no subsidy tends to increase support. And the industrial noise, so hedonic evaluation, which is aesthetic, was industrial noise, or have a minor or no effects on this. So, I mean, at the end, let's wrap up, all what we have seen here with these four levels of analysis. And then let's come back to the question, how is the social acceptance of geothermal system characterized in the United States? And based on more than 6,000 respondents across the country, we can now see a clear picture here. So first, people's expectations are very pragmatic. So we want energy systems that are affordable, reliable, and safety for humans. That is a non-negotiable condition. And this is a good news for geothermal systems because geothermal fill these conditions pretty well. So it's not a technical issue, it is a communication, issue in this case. Not surprisingly, the geothermal energy in general have low familiarity and is far less known than other clean energy sources. Uh, we also can say that the overall acceptance across the three geothermal systems in the United States is moderate but positive, so tending to go more up than down. So, and this is a strong foundation to build on, even because this is happening even when familiarity is still limited. Third, we can say that when we talk about general attitudes, the main driver are consistent across the systems, which is perceived benefits. Also, important drivers are the feeling of fairness, the social responsibility in subjective norms, and familiarity. And the main barrier in this general attitude is the perception of costs. And finally, the context matters. This is really clear when we saw the factorial survey experiment, is that support increase when people see that the risks are reduced. Uh, Maybe there is risk management there. And when they believe that the costs are shared fairly, when they perceive a benefit on it, and when they recognize that there are credible community endorsements. So these are the main, let's say, the main characteristics of geothermal systems in the United States. Now, before finishing, also with what we can do with the data, independently, regardless of the analysis we have done, we also have done some crosstabs checks and analysis, and we can use the data for this one too. What I did here is that based on the data I have, let's say, create an archetype that capture broader patterns of how people respond in the survey I launch. So, and this can help to illustrate how different groups think and feel about geothermal energy. So the first one is the pragmatic supporters, is how I call them, right? This is generally older adults who trust science and value reliability, and also live in suburban or rural settings, and they show normally, higher familiarity with geothermal, and they view geothermal as a reliable and responsible energy option. The other ones is the cautious skeptics. That is not the, people who will oppose just itself. It's just cautious, and is predominantly from 18 to 44 years old. Uh, is more females than male, and they live in urban and suburban areas and have low familiarity and a moderate income too. And they are generally supportive of renewables, but certainly about geothermal, they do have some questions of safety costs and obviously visibility. So what we can do also with this is just to generate some communication strategies. Maybe the communication strategy for the pragmatic supporters will be emphasize about the technical reliability, the benefits that you can get, the scientific credibility that must be there, and then feature all these and frame a message saying, for example, proven reliable American heat beneath our feet. And in case of the cautious skeptics, you can use another, with the data, you can use another idea of communications. So you can use storytelling, show transparency, and use community voices. So, and frame the messages as safe, local, and smart energy for families and cities. So this is some other examples of what we can do with those data about the social acceptance, because it goes just beyond just to say people oppose or are in favor of, or they support or they are reject the energy. So this is a social judgments that can evolve over time, but it's important to understand what are the drivers and what, it's at least not only the level of acceptance, but the drivers that are underneath those levels. And with this, I finished the presentation. I hope I didn't, surpass the time, but thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. And I hope this would be something useful for some.
Thanks, Carlos. That was great. A lot of really good data in there. Great to see that. We are going to have a bit of a Q&A here. So if anyone has any questions, please go ahead and enter them into the Q&A function on the Zoom UI. I've got a couple in the meantime that I'd like to ask. So Carlos, you looked at a lot of different aspects of social acceptance of geothermal here. What really jumped out at you? Was there anything that really surprised you in the responses here, or struck you as particularly noteworthy?
Yeah, I mean the when the data start, when I was starting analyzing the data and I start just watching how they was like out, and I did also some study like this, similar like this, but in Canada, and the similarities are really big, are huge about these different layers of analysis. Um, what I see like really, I mean, it was surprising for me was, for example, that in the general attitudes, the risk perception is not there. It was not in the regression analysis, was not something that was important or significant. And that was, I was wondering why. I mean, that doesn't fit with sometimes what we see in the news or in other papers that I read about the risks. But then I did understand that maybe is not maybe, but with the factorial survey experiment, I did kind of understood that this is because people normally will not see the risk in daily life or in, let's say, in general. But when they see a project, a concrete project there, that then all these ideas can change and become like real, because you will see something that will affect you directly. This is one of the things that came out of my it was surprise from the study, let's say. But yeah, and overall, I mean, I was really happy and enjoying doing all this study with the team that we have there.
Mhm. Yeah, that is interesting the way that the risks both appear and don't appear there. Um, you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that you had done not just the national analysis, but also regional and state analysis. And obviously, we don't have time here to go through all of those. But do you have like, are there some snapshots or quick hits that you can give us? Like any, are there certain regions where the results were completely different from the national results, or very noteworthy differences between two different regions? And anything like that you can share with us?
Yeah, some are. I mean, yes. By the way, actually, this reminds me something that the general report for all the 14 states and the 5 region and the national outcomes are in the website in Geothermal Rising website. I mean, if people can download that, the report and just see how everything was done state by state. But yes, you're right. In some states. I mean, the average was pretty similar. I mean, the perceived benefit was always there. Uh, for example, in Hawaii, um, I remember that checking the attributes there, while in the rest of the country, affordability was the most important. In Hawaii was safety for humans, actually. And that was something that came out of really struck me and double check actually. um,
Mm,
because yes, I mean normally for the rest of the states and in the country, affordability was one of the main attributes. In Hawaii was safety for humans. And then you start seeing in those results a little changes in terms of the attributes, and also in terms of the regression analysis for the levels of acceptance. Um, yeah, I mean, some states are different than others, and in some states I expected to see more acceptance, but no, the level of acceptance was not that high. But still, overall, the acceptance is, let's say, moderate, between 3.5 in some cases.
got it. Good. Looks like we have a question in here from Kat. Thank you, Carlos. Excellent presentation. During the presentation, it was shown that reducing risk is an effective measure for social acceptance. What type of risks do people perceive?
Yeah, that is difficult to answer. Like, let's say if they feel exactly the seismicity risk or other type of risk, because I didn't frame a specific risk because it was kind of difficult for the three type of geothermal systems and for the different places. But some people, I think that answer that based off on what they think about the underground. So they sometimes think that underground is bad. Something will happen if we go there, stuff like that. Some other people might that have experienced the risk, let's say, differently because of the seismicity, uh, even because they live in these regions where there are some earthquake, or because they have here or experienced some places where this seismicity happened before. That's another layer of other way to perceive the risk for this. So um, I think that it will be different if you go more local, how people perceive this type of risk. But definitely there is this component of this underworld there. Also thinking that with concerns about the water contamination and stuff down there, right? Because it's something that you do not see. You do not see what is happening around there. But yes, that is what I see in the factorial survey experiment. I just there in the level, let's say in the level 3 of the risk, in the most negative outcome, I did mention earthquake. And it was on purpose, and it was to check also, like, if you show that is going to be something like such as an earthquake was there. So then you can see like the results that was the main, let's say, driver when the here. Here I did mention specifically the chance of earthquake or contamination and high risk and cost overruns. So it's not only the physical risk, but also financial. That was going from high risk, which is the level 3, to low risk, which is no risk. This was without a doubt, some of the strongest predictor in this scenario. So I think that when you go to a project specifically, you need to be really transparent and really, it's important how you manage the risk, but before you start with the project too.
Great, thanks. We have another question here from an anonymous attendee. If you were to write a pitch for a radio talk show to get a speaker on their show, what would your opening sentences be?
I, this one over here, yeah, the one you see at the end. I mean, geothermal systems are ready, but technical potential means little without social permission.
I think that's a good one. I like
Yeah.
that. And I have one more question for you of my own here, which is this is great, and there's so much data here, and you've made some really good conclusion, come to some really good conclusions here. What are logical next steps? What kind of follow-up research do you see coming from this, or further analysis? Where do you go from here?
Yeah, what I want to do is now, in the literature, this social acceptance are um, have three, let's say, in Bustenhagen, which is the person who coined or who used the most this concept of social acceptance. They divide the social acceptance in three parts. One is the political acceptance, which is the more broadly acceptance, community acceptance, which is a little bit of what I am doing here, but the other one is the market acceptance. So I think that geothermal systems is not only important for people to see, accept the system, but in this case also, what does the firms and people who invest in geothermal systems, let's say, what are the factors that lead them to, uh, invest or adopt the geothermal system? So this is one of the questions I want to ask in my DBA that I'm starting.
Mhm.
And with that questions, I want to ask also, accept a technology is one thing, but adopting the technology is another thing. So there is, I think, room here for continue with the study in terms of what is the willingness to pay for the people if they want to use geothermal systems, or what is the willingness to adopt. So based on the data I have here, which I know that now perceived benefits and all the attributes which are more important, I think that can be a continuous research, now following what motivates the people now that they know what are the drivers, what motivates them to adopt actually the technology, or how much are they willing to pay for the technology.
Sounds great. Yeah, that's sounds like there's a lot of places to go from here then. That sounds
Yeah.
great. I don't see any more questions in the queue, so I think we're about there. Thank you so much, Carlos. This has been fantastic. Really great presentation, and thank you to all of our attendees today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll hopefully talk soon.
Thank you all, and have a nice day. Bye bye.